Thank you all so much for coming near and far. I don't know how far people traveled. I think I have a friend, is she here? Who came from New York. Is she here? I don't know. So I just appreciate you all on joining us for our 5th anniversary of PureSpark. Yeah, 5 years. It goes by fast, y'all. It goes by fast. And so I want to holler and figure out who's in the house. We have Roxbury in the house. Okay, Roxbury's in the house. We got Dorchester in the house. Whoa. Dang, Dorchester. What about Mattapan? Yeah, I knew it was gonna be like that. Sorry, yeah, okay. So Dorchester is actually factually in the house. Do we have any HBCUs in the house? Okay, Howard. Okay, you know. Okay, I see you. And who? What he said? Oh, more the house. Oh, okay, the house. I got you. Another one right there. Okay. Any other HBCUs? Spelman. Okay. Well, welcome. I love it. Well, I think you all know about PureSpark, but anybody here not know anything about what the heck is PureSpark? Okay, I see one hand raised, 2 hand raised, but okay, cool. There's a couple of people that have no idea who I am and what this is all about. Okay, great, perfect. This is for you. So PureSpark was created really out of a lot of pain. In 2017, I went through a tough time mentally, spiritually, emotionally. And honestly, I didn't think I would make it past the age of 35. And obviously, I'm here. And I thought that I would use my gift of life and take my lived experiences and do something with it. And, one of the things that I learned from my therapist was that there's something about somatic healing. Anybody know anything about somatic healing? There's something really special about somatic healing. And she told me to try yoga. So I did some yoga and I said, well, dang, this downward dog is doing something. Okay, I see what she did there. And then later I fired her because I was just like, what do I need you for? I got yoga. But what I realized was that there was a connection between the mind and the body, and therapy did help. It got me to a certain point. But it's a practice that I still use today. And it's also practices that we, try to advertise and share with people. And there's some yoga teachers downstairs. But basically, if you take a look here, you can't really see because it's tiny. But I promise you, those are wellness practitioners that are on our website. And if you scan the QRC code, you can learn more about those wellness practitioners. And some of them are actually downstairs as well. And so before we get started, because I know time is running out and I'm just talking my mind off, but before we get started, I just want to make sure that I let you all know that we're going to talk about some serious topics, okay? Yes, we have the food, the music, the massages downstairs, but we're going to talk about some things that might be heavy, okay? And if it's too much for you to bear, feel free to stand up and kind of, exit, use the restroom, do what you got to do. But I just want to forewarn you that we might bring up topics like depression, suicidality, suicide attempts, and I think there's mostly adults in the room, but I just wanted to share that with you. Okay, so you might have seen this downstairs and in different places, and I just want to touch on this topic really briefly. On, what day was that? 2 weeks ago on Tuesday, I got a call from the founder of Beam, Yolo Akili, who's one of our partners. And I was actually in yoga, I missed the call. He said, Naisha, hey, I need your help. There's a family in Boston who has a son that's, looking for mental health services that don't involve the police. And I said, oh, okay, well, I know that. Boom, that's the easy answer. And he said, oh, okay, thank you. I think we already have, the answer that we need and so on and so forth. And then on Thursday, I got some not so great news. And I realized that when I sent the list of reservations over to the Museum of Science, this woman who wanted to be here, unfortunately, is not. And so in her remembrance and her name, I still want her spirit to be here because she was the second person that reserved a ticket. So when I say she really wanted to be here, she really wanted to be here, right? And so in her name and her honor, we are assisting the family with a GoFundMe. And this GoFundMe QRC code will be downstairs as well. So please, nothing is too little, too much, whatever. Please donate. And with that being said, I want to introduce my bison sister to the stage. Soraya, come on up, girl.
Hello, 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 hello. How y'all doing? Uh-oh, I said, how are y'all doing? It's Black people in the house. I gotta make sure you're with me. I like a little call and response, even though it's heavy. We're in here together, yes? Talk to me, I love that. It's good to be here with y'all. I'm Soraya Wintersmith. I'm a journalist for GBH News in my day job, but I'm not here in my capacity as a journalist tonight. I'm a person that likes to ask questions and just piece things together, okay? And to that point, thank you to Naisha Deed for allowing me to guide tonight's conversation. When she first approached me about this, she told me that it's part of the Museum of Science initiative about being human, exploring that question. And I was like, that video is really inspiring because that's not where my mind went. I was like, it's a really hard time to be a human right now. If you're my age or better, then you remember financial crisis. We all survive global health crisis. Depending on where you are on the political spectrum, you might say something about national, political, something. So I'm really happy to be having this conversation because we need to have it. I can't tell you how many people, aside from myself, have just been thinking about mental health preservation because of everything that's going on. And because of that, I'm really excited to be in conversation with two amazing women who are not only just being courageously vulnerable, but they're also doing the work of helping Black people, particularly Black people, along their mental health journey and get free. And so I'm gonna welcome to the stage Imani. Imani, come on up. Imani is a writer, a mental health advocate, and founder of Depressed While Black. She brings her powerful story of surviving a suicide attempt and living with clinical depression. She is passionate, or a passionate voice for culturally competent therapy and breaking down stigma. Welcome, Imani. And Zakiya Blackman, founder and executive director, had to add it in, of Black People Die by Suicide Too. Zakiya is a mental health advocate and speaker dedicated to helping others navigate their own journeys with depression, anxiety, and suicidal thoughts. She emphasizes the importance of self-care, seeking help, and building resilience. Welcome, Zakiya. And while she's getting settled, I'm just going to remind everybody again to keep questions in mind for Q&A. I'll do my best to get to them on this iPad here as we talk. So ladies, hi. We're talking about leading with the wisdom of lived experience this evening, because we know we can always turn to academics, but you all are bringing insight from having lived. Talk a little bit about the experience that gets us to how we see you now. Imani, I'm going to start with you. I think when I read your website, it was really important that you didn't want other people to experience the lack of culturally competent products that you experience.
Yeah, I think for me, my mental health journey started when I was speeding on a Los Angeles highway wanting to die. That was the wake up call of like, okay, this is really bad. And so I went to my counseling center. I was a grad student at USC at the time in Los Angeles. And I sat in front of a Black counselor and a white counselor, and they were both women. And my body was just completely crumpled. And I had locks at the time, and the locks were like just in front of my face, like curtains. And I was just so ashamed that I couldn't work myself out of depression. And so both of the counselors told me, you have to drop out of school and you have to have a police escort to the psychiatric hospital. And I knew that could have potentially be a death sentence for me. Dropping out of grad school would have meant the loss of health insurance. How can I pay for my mental health treatment if I don't have insurance? And so at a time when I was in the biggest crisis of my life up to that point, I had to push it to the back and basically fight for my existence in the school and negotiate with them to not get kicked out of my program. And, eventually I negotiated with them so I didn't end up in a police car just because I'm sad. And I just got a therapist. And the therapist was just someone in the network. I didn't have the skills to look for a Black therapist, so it was a white woman, older white woman. And she said, you have major depressive disorder. And I'm just like, I have depression? I thought depression is a white person disease. I was like, what? And it took me a while to really accept that I had depression, because I grew up in an environment that's like, well, we survived slavery, you can survive anything. So it's almost like when people say that, they're not giving you the permission to feel your full emotion, including depression. And so that experience, it made me look around in my community, and I was like, okay, who else is Black who deals with depression? And I didn't know anybody. I eventually entered another graduate program at Columbia, and I had to write a thesis. And I decided to make that thesis Depressed While Black. And I was basically trying to write my way into community. I wanted to write, to explore who else feels the way that I feel, who else has gone through this experience. So it went from a thesis in 2014 to an online platform of just sharing our stories to a nonprofit, a 501c3 nonprofit that started in 2020. And so it all started with me wanting to just put my feelings on a piece of paper. So I just want to encourage y'all, write your dreams, write your goals, because you can build a whole new life off of what you write. And that's basically what I did. I wrote myself into a new reality. And so our nonprofit, Depressed While Black, we provide Black affirming care items to psychiatric patients. So typically in a psychiatric facility, you're gonna get watery lotion to make you ashier. Then before you got the lotion, watery lotion, you don't get no chapstick. You might be able to get a little cup of Vaseline, if you could, right? If the nurse like you. What else? The combs are like the baby doll combs that y'all had as a child. It got no space in between, like it's just straight up, just, you can't even use it. And so I was like, why is the place where I'm supposed to heal, I'm deteriorating? Like my braids, I came in with fresh braids that looked fuzzy by the time I got out the psychiatric hospital. I'm ashy. And so I'm mad. Like, I'm sorry, I'm mad. And I was on my cycle, and they make you wear like pregnancy basically pads. And so there's so much dehumanization in these psychiatric facilities that when I got out, I was like, yeah, nobody else is gonna go through that again. I was like, I'm gonna be the last one.
Clap it up for that.
I said, I'm gonna be the last one. But I didn't know if I would be well enough to be able to do nonprofit work. I have been so mentally unwell. There was definitely a lot of psychiatrists is like, best of luck to you. And so just by the grace of God, I had a little bit more stability. I started buying Black hair care items from a Black-owned beauty store to patients in psychiatric facilities. And then that grew into starting to create Black beauty supply kits. And we've donated over 600 Black beauty supply kits to 8 psychiatric facilities across the East Coast. And so again, I just want to encourage y'all, you don't even really have to be mentally stable to support Black folks in psychiatric facilities. If you got $5, you could go on down to the Dollar Tree, buy you some chapstick, buy you some reading glasses. A lot of patients need reading glasses. You can buy just little stuff and you can change a whole person's life. It don't take a whole lot. You just gotta care. And so that's really been my journey, is saying Black people are inherently worthy of care. We don't have to earn the privilege of getting a wide tooth comb. We shouldn't have to earn the privilege to get Black affirming shampoo and conditioner. We should get that just because we're human. And that's been kind of the mantra for my life and for my organization.
Ashe. Zakiya, I'm gonna ask you the same question. Tell us about how we get to the way that we're seeing Zakiya Blackmon now.
I don't want to go ask her about it. You know, suicide is really a part of my story because I was a child around 11 years old where I started struggling with thoughts of suicide. Now, I grew up in the 90s, so I didn't really have the terminology, or I didn't know what suicide was. But what I did know as a child was I often thought about ways of ending my life and not wanting to be here. And I didn't tell anyone because in the Black community, we would hear, well, Black people were slaves. They didn't kill themselves. I'm like, y'all, they were jumping off a boat saying I would be free in the afterlife. Is that not suicide? But it often made me isolate and not want to tell anyone. And so in my early 20s, when I was in grad school, I was at Georgetown, and I had recently lost my 13-year-old cousin to suicide. At that time, my family did not know I was also still struggling with it because I never talked about it. And I said, imagine having cancer for 10 plus years and not telling anybody. You probably would die. So at that time, I felt like I was matching what I felt on the inside, which is what led me to attempting to end my life. And I remember texting a friend. I told her it would be so much better if I wasn't here. And I attempted to end my life, and the police officers came to the house, broke through the window, and I wound up being forced into the psychiatric hospital. I'm grateful that they gave me the option where they did say, we can handcuff you, that's another conversation, or we can transport you. So I did have that option to be transported through the paramedics. And when I arrived there, I remember, any millennials in here? Okay. So when I got to the hospital, I thought it was gonna be like Good Burger, right? Y'all know the Nickelodeon movie Good Burger, Kenan and Kel? And I'm like, oh my gosh, when I get in here, people are gonna be very mummy-like. So I was terrified. I remember crying. And when I eventually did get up to the psychiatric unit floor, I remember a Black lady. And I was like, I don't belong here. I was like, I went to Howard, I went to Georgetown. I was like, I'm working in my career. And that black lady looked at me and she said, so? I'm like, I don't belong here with these people. You know, these people, this is a mistake. And I remember calling my mother and my aunt in New Jersey, and my aunt's like, oh my gosh, you don't belong here with those people. I'm like, I tried to tell them I do not belong here with these people. And she said something to me that really changed my life. She said, if you were having issues with your heart, you would have to see the cardiologist. And you're here because you haven't been doing a great job of taking care of your brain. So that's why you're here. And that was the moment, not right then and there, a couple days passed. I started to kind of marinate with that. And I'm like, I think she's right. That's why I'm here. And from that moment, I went into a partial hospitalization program, and that really kind of started my mental health journey. I also started writing for different platforms to share my lived experience. It was helpful to see other people sharing their stories. That helped me feel less alone. That led to a podcast. That led to self-publishing a book. That led to pursuing non-mental health certifications. That led to doing a lot of speaking, a lot of consulting. So it was one of those things where I was doing it for myself, but I realized it was starting to help other people, even though initially it was kind of like a selfish act, because I was like, I can't live in hiding no more. Living in hiding is what nearly killed me, and I cannot do that anymore. And so that's really how I got here today. I am very excited that I'll enter my PhD program in the fall to research Black suicide prevention, because that is my gem, if you will, because we are talking more about mental health, but I've been finding that suicide is often missing from the mental health conversation. Nobody likes to take that walk down that. And so because I've lost a relative, because it's my experience, I live with generalized anxiety disorder as well as bipolar disorder. And so I want to use the research that I gather, and I've already started gathering through the nonprofit that I co-founded, Black People Die by Suicide Too, to not just use the research to help influence policy as well as funding, to make sure that Black people have access to, as we talked about culturally, mental health care.
All right. So now that you know who these women are, I'm gonna try and incorporate audience questions along with some of what I have here. So barriers to seeking support. What do you think are some of the biggest barriers Black people face when it comes to seeking mental health support? And how can we work to break down those barriers, particularly in light of the unique challenges faced under the current political and social climate? I'm going to add an anonymous question that I have here and talk about whether or not your financial status contributed to the onset. Imani, you're looking at me. What's going on? What's going on?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I just feel like white supremacy is the biggest barrier to Black wellness and Black mental health care. The problem is not our community. It did not originate in our community. It originated outside of our community. So I just want to uplift that. For me, it was very difficult to be seen as a human being when I was in a psychiatric facility. I had to basically work my way out of the most punitive floor. So what I saw in my experience, they put Black women in the floor that has the least privileges. So you don't have access to your phone, you don't have access to the outside. And basically what they do is they try to make you follow whatever guidelines, rules they have, even when it's not effective. So your ability to get out, your discharge date, is often based upon being compliant. And that means going to group therapy, even though it don't do nothing for you, and doing these things. And a lot of it is rooted in the fact that they don't see us as human, right? If you saw us as human, you would provide personalized, specialized care that's Black affirming. you would incorporate ancestral modalities into the work, into the treatment. You would bring our families and our loved ones into the treatment. They should be able to stay with us, or at least meet us in our rooms. A lot of times we can't even have them in our room. We have to meet in the hallway. And I think, as you all know, the psychiatric facility hallway, it gets lit. So imagine like the most unhinged thing you ever saw in real life. It's like every day in a psych ward. And you don't want your mama sitting in that, right? So places where we can have our loved ones with us, our village with us in a safe and non-chaotic environment, right? And so for me, I had to fight, right? As soon as I recognized that I dealt with depression, I had to fight, right? And a lot of times that's what happens to Black women, right? We're fighting so much to be seen. We forget we got a whole mental health diagnosis we got to treat. And so I think for me, right, the barriers that need to be removed, we need to get more peer support in these places. We need to get more peer support, because when I was in the psychiatric facility, it was the patients that were helping me more than the doctors. The doctors, I maybe saw them 5 minutes tops. And they did not tell me what the medications do to my body, didn't say anything. It was the patients, my peers, who were telling me, okay, this drug does this drug does that, this is what you're gonna feel. And they gave me so much love and support. We really need to make sure that peer support workers have a living wage, right? Because that's how we cared for each other when our ancestors were doing this mental health care. It was peers, it was community-based. And what I really love about, there's a doctor, a Nigerian doctor called Dr. Thomas Lambo. And this was around the 1950s in Nigeria, right at the beginning of their independence. And he created this model called the Arrow Village. It was an outpatient program. And so what he did was he had folks who were dealing with mental health challenges have their loved one come to the village and stay in the village with someone. And they were able, the people in the home that owned the home, they got money to like help take care of the person. And there was a mixture of both Western medicine and ancestral healing. And it was in a home. And I think what's so important is that we have to heal at home. We can't heal in jail. I don't care if they got a wellness wing in the prison. It's still prison. And I think we really have to end the criminalization of Black mental health. Right?
Imani, you're hitting it. I want to tap Zakiya in.
I'm just saying, it should not be a crime for a Black person to be sad. It should not be a crime for a Black person to be angry. We're owed trillions of dollars in reparations. I'm supposed to be angry. We built this country. And so Black folks are supposed to be angry. That's what makes us human. And so we need to have mental health treatment facilities that reward and affirm Black people for being human and having natural human responses. And so I think in this Arrow Village, what I love about this model is that no one had to code switch.
I love Black people.
Because they was healing at home. And their practitioners was Black folks. And so I think that's where I hope the mental health system is going.
Zakiya, I looked at you when she mentioned peer support, because you're a certified peer support specialist.
I am, yes.
Is that a barrier that you see?
Absolutely. If I would have had, I've had a great therapist. We've been working together almost 10 years. Whew. But I do realize that if I would have had someone who had the lived experience, because therapists, social workers, psychiatrists, they cannot shoulder the work of the community. It's impossible. There's too great of a need. And so people who are peer recovery specialists or peer recovery coaches, we are people with lived experience. I did have to go through a 2-year credentialing process. And so because of the barriers that Imani just mentioned, at Black People Die by Suicide too, we have our Black and suicidal peer support groups. That is a support group that Black people can actually talk about their struggles with mental health and even suicide. We make it very known that this is a space where you can talk about it. We have virtual support groups that are free because of the grants that we've received. So anyone can log on. We are based in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, so we do in-person events as well. But peer support specialists, we are unique in that we can share that experience. And I feel like that would have made a big difference in my recovery journey. So for me, I'm really just being the support that I needed in my darkest days to other people.
I'm gonna start with Zakiya first, and this is something that we were talking about a little bit. It is an audience question. What role does spirituality play in your treatment? Did you/have you ever received any Afrocentric approaches to therapy?
So I did not initially. That was a loaded question. My mind is processing.
It's a lot.
So spirituality first. Okay, so I'll start there. When I first got my diagnosis, initially, I ran away from the Black church because that church trauma was real. I was told, don't take that medication. I was told, you just need to pray and speak in tongues for 20 minutes a day and it's just gonna go away. So I didn't want to pray. I didn't want to step foot in the church. Now that years have passed, I'm in a much better space, and I realized it was ignorance, a lack of education, wanting to help but not knowing how. And so now I'm on a journey where honestly I'm still exploring what my spirituality looked like because of all the trauma that I dealt with in the church. And realizing that when we're talking about somatic healing, I know Naisha brought that up, a lot of things that Christians don't understand often deem as the devil. Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to do yoga, but I'm told I'm doing the downward dog and that is the devil. So in realizing there are so many pathways to healing and that wellness is so broad. You don't just have to do therapy, just have to do medication. But when we're talking about that, different practices in terms of affirmations, like being a part of my mental health and my healing journey. And so that's for me, I'm just in a space where I'm just continuing to explore what that looks like and actually answering the question, what does my wellness look like inside and outside of Christianity? Because I have to define that for myself.
You finna preach, girl.
Right.
You want to talk about spirituality?
Does it fit? Can it fit?
I think it can. I think I had a similar experience with Zakiya. So I ran so far away from God. I ran into God. I didn't know that was possible, but it's very much possible. So I felt like in my mind, the furthest away from God is using psychedelics. And then psychedelics led me to God.
So I'm in the back there. Talk about it.
So what had happened was I have a mental health diagnosis called borderline personality disorder, and I constantly tell people, don't Google it, because you're gonna think I'm out of my mind. So, but it's highly stigmatized. It's so stigmatized that if BPD is on my chart, a professional can deny services because they'll say I'm too difficult. So it's highly stigmatized. And that's the reason why it took me so long to get a diagnosis, because I'm pretty sure some of these therapists knew I had it, but didn't want to put it on my chart. And so I was a wreck. My personal life was a wreck. I lost my best friend because I was wilding. And the medication didn't work for me. And so, yeah, I was like, it's either psychedelic treatment or death. So it was a life or death decision for me. And so I started taking Spravato. Spravato is a legal medication. It's basically a nasal spray with ketamine. And it's for people with treatment-resistant depression. So folks who are unable to get benefits from antidepressants. So antidepressant doesn't work for them. And so I started taking it, and my first experience being high on, and you're high, like, I'm just gonna let you know, you're gonna be high. I walked to the wrong car, and I was like, Mama, why is this car blue? She's like, this is not your car. So anyway, the first thought in my mind when I was high on ketamine was almost everything my mom taught me about religion is a lie. Mm. And basically, the ketamine taught me you're going to have to start from scratch and deprogram almost everything you learned about religion. And I would not have had that experience without that drug. As I started progressing, I started figuring out what's out there and just found a Black-led psychedelic therapy organization. And so I found a Black-led psychedelic therapy organization that utilizes the same psychedelic medicine that our ancestors use. There's a psychedelic plant that's indigenous to Nigeria. So our ancestors was using this, right? And so most recently, just fast forward, I had a psychedelic experience. I took a drug that, don't play with it, just, it's called DMT. And the therapist that I had, he played psychedelic funk. Like he played like something from Parliament, like during the trip. And also just want to speak to, in the 70s, Black folks was using psychedelics, and that's what inspired P-Funk. It inspired George Clinton. All the stuff that he was doing was powered by psychedelics. And so when I was literally in the song, and basically the image that I was getting, the thought that I was getting was, the reason why it didn't work with my boyfriend is because he didn't see my Black power, he didn't see my Black strength. And so for me, psychedelics, what it does is scrubs off everything that's fake about me. And all the scaffolding, all the manufacturing that we create in order to function in a white supremacist society, it takes it all off so you really see your real self. And then in seeing your real self, you start to realize there's nothing wrong with me. There's nothing, not only is there nothing wrong with me, ultimately, I'm just a spirit in a body, and my only responsibility is just to be present. That's it. And so, yeah, spirituality for me, it developed and it was birthed by mental health treatment. And I think the gateway for me into being a more spiritual person is that I had to love myself as a spirit, not just as this human being that is a laborer, that does labor, or does you know what I'm saying? As a Black woman, we're typically, our identity is rooted in our labor. And so the psychedelics for me helped me really to realize I'm a spirit, and all I gotta do, you know, be Black. That's all.
I want to note that she said, don't play with it. Don't play with it. Don't leave this panel then go, oh, let me look up. She said, don't play with it. An anonymous question, ideas about educating family members about what to look for around symptoms of depression, bipolar, anxiety issues that might need to be addressed by a professional. What are we telling folks about? Right, what are we telling folks about what to look for?
So, and the question is how to bring it up to family members? Is that the question?
It says ideas about educating. So yeah, how to bring it up, but also what are we watching out for? What are some signs?
So there's so many. I feel like I want a clinician to come up here because I know my lane. So there are so many things to look out for because it varies person to person. So how it shows up for me, it may not show up for Imani. So, but one of the things, if you notice a change in behavior from how someone is typically functioning, you see a decline in their functioning. So I can use myself for an example. I stopped taking care of my hygiene. I was isolating, not talking to anybody. When I had my attempt, I was writing indirect quotes on social media, so looking out for those things. And even if somebody's saying things like, I don't want to be here anymore, even if they don't use the word suicide, that would probe you to ask more questions. What do you mean by that? What does that mean? If you see that people are, especially even when you're talking about children, it may be a decline in their schoolwork. When you're talking about friends, you're like, you always join us for happy hour, or you always come on this yearly thing that we do. You starting to noticing that they're actually pulling away. For Black women, a lot of times depression shows up as irritability. So, you know, I have leopard on, but my mother said when I start, because part of bipolar disorder, you know, is depression as well. She always be like, ooh, that cat's coming out, because I love leopard. She'd be like, ram. Like, mine for me is, the irritability is, you do not, that's a side of me I don't like to, but it's for a Black woman, irritability. And so when you're having to notice these signs for people, it's best to bring it up and say, these are the things that I notice about you. And coming from a place of caring, I care about you, I love you, these are the things that I'm noticing. Is everything okay? And sometimes people may be resistant to that. I know, like in my family, what I started to do, I first started sending my family members YouTube videos and articles on mental health, like depression, anxiety. And I remember when my mom read the article, she was like, I got all of these. That was the first time when she realized. Now my mom in therapy, you know, she in therapy. And we talk about it all the time. Be like, how was it with Shaniqua? She'd be like, girl, how was it with Tamika? Like, you know, we got Black therapists. And so that really is what started the conversation, like for my family, because of my lived experience. I also would suggest you can take things like mental health first aid. That's a great course that can teach you best ways to support a loved one. You can do, I'm an instructor for mental health first aid, shameless plug, but QPR, question, persuade, refer is a suicide intervention training, assist. There are so many like community education trainings that you can take. But when you are noticing that family members or loved ones are struggling, it's just pulling them to the side. Don't do it in front of other people or calling them out, trying to make them a spectacle or make them feel bad. Just really pull them to the side like, hey sis, like you wanna go out to eat, or can I come over? And really just having a question, you know, having a conversation to show that you actually care. And then from there saying, what are some of the best ways that I can support you? And people may not know, because I have a friend like that. Girl don't be knowing. I'd be like, all right, we're gonna have to explore some things. But asking them, what does support look like for you? And also, when it comes to suicide, please do not assume that what's a lifeline for you is a lifeline for somebody else. Because you can say, you got that job, you got that husband, or you got that partner, you got that house. Like, why would you not? Just because it's a lifeline for you, it's not for someone else. So also, please just don't make the assumption that what works for you or someone else will work for them.
Imani, I'm gonna ask you this, because we went there. Cannabis is legal here. I have an anonymous question that says, have you considered or used cannabis to manage anxiety and depression? What are your thoughts on its use in peer support groups in Black communities addressing mental health challenges? You bring up the idea that traditional medicine, European or Western medicine sometimes doesn't work for us, and we turn to other things. Is this a thing that we've considered?
Yeah, I went to dispensary today. Like, what's up? Like, like I picked up Rick Simpson oil. I don't know if anybody know what Rick Simpson oil is, but it's a cannabis oil. Be careful with it. That thing is concentrated, all right? So don't take too much of it. But it's a cannabis oil that a man named Rick Simpson used. And he says, right, I can't say this, but he says that it cured his skin cancer. He put it on topically. And so people have said that this cannabis oil can treat a lot of health conditions. For me, I use it I microdose it. It comes in like a syringe. It's very like a dark color. And I just microdose it every day to help manage my depression. I started taking it, I think around the summer this past year. And I haven't had a major depression crisis since taking it.
Hey.
Yay! And what I love about it, you get to keep your personality because antidepressants, in some ways, they do work for me. They help stabilize me. And so I just do want to say, like, I'm not against taking antidepressants. It stabilizes me, but it kind of masks and dulls my personality. And so I wanted to find a medication that allows me to be my true self. And so, yeah, it's definitely, cannabis has absolutely helped me. And I use it the way that I think someone would use like an antacid. Like if you're getting heartburn and you just feel it kind of creeping up and you're like, I'm not feeling so good. I just take maybe like half an edible, whole edible. And it kind of, what it does for me, and a lot of professionals say this word too, it just takes the edge off. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's not good to experience like a full-blown, out-of-control mental health crisis. There gets to a certain point where the pain is not generative. The pain is not gonna take you to the next level. It becomes like too exhausting. And so for me, yeah, cannabis helps out a lot.
There you go. I'm getting the sign to wrap up, so I'm gonna pitch this last one to you and ask that you be brief. We have a question. We can't forget about the men. Anything about successful methods that help Black men access mental health resources, given that they often avoid or lack support due to cultural stigmas in the Black community? Do we have something for the gentleman?
So I know there are a few resources. There's an organization called Black Men Heal. But I can't think specifically offhand, but I could say you could check out PureSpark's directory to go find in terms of a clinician or provider who might be of assistance. I can't think of any specifically offhand. I know Beam is a great organization as well. I know there's a social media account called Black Men Express Yourself that has been really good in terms of supporting Black men. Those are the ones that come offhand. Oh yes, Taraji P. Henson, the Boris Henson, shout out to you. The Boris Henson Foundation, they do offer a lot of free services for Black men as well in terms of therapy.
And then even if you can't think of specific resources, what are we offering
Rashawn
to help the men get from?
I want to shout out Rashawn Miller. He's, I'm from North Carolina. He's from North Carolina, so I just want to show love to Carolina, our people down south. He has an amazing organization called Eustress, and he does a lot of great work. And he's a former athlete as well, and knows what it's like to have so much expectations, like hyper masculine expectations on you. And so, yeah, I would say Rashawn is like a leader in that field.
Excellent.
You want to say?
No. We're real interactive now. The super Black panel. All right. I got the cutoff. It's a really good conversation, but both of these ladies will be downstairs. So if you have some questions, I think y'all are going to be down there. You're cool to be talking to people. Come and approach them and say hi. Ask your questions. We're going to wrap up. And Aisha, I need you to come back and close us out.
You want to take this one?
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And I also want to say that these two women here, I've been following them on social media. I guess we realize it's been like 5 years, over 5 years, right? And we all admire each other because, if you know my story, our stories are very similar. We both were incarcerated. We all were incarcerated in psych wards. And so when you're talking about, how it goes down in the psych ward, it get real. Like, so real. We all kind of know. So we're all bonded in that way. But we didn't let that experience keep us down. We decided that we were going to take that experience and do something with it and give it back to our community. So thank you all